Hello everyone and welcome back to another video game video. Today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on the new Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've been playing it for the last few days. I'm really enjoying it. Picked it up on Steam. I just did the standard edition. I didn't do the deluxe or premium editions. There are a few differences between those editions. Most notably, in the premium and the deluxe versions, you get additional planes as well as additional airports. Um, One thing I was kind of concerned about when I was buying the game was like, does that mean that these airports aren't in the game at all? And that's not the case. So, for example, I think in the premium version or like the highest deluxe one, the Denver International Airport is in there. You can still fly into the Denver International Airport in the standard edition. However, the deluxe edition and premium edition airports, what that means is they are more they're what they're called handcrafted airports, and that means that they are um, more detailed. They look more realistic in the deluxe and premium editions. You can still fly in and out of those airports, even in the standard edition. They'll just be a more generic looking airport. Um, and there's like 36,000 airports in the game or something like that. So you can fly into basically any kind of airports, large or small. If you have the deluxe editions, they're basically just going to look more realistic and look more true to life than they do in the standard edition. So picked this up on Steam. Picked up the standard edition. I'm running. Um, it's a fairly demanding game. My computer is 8 years old. The only major upgrade I've made to it in that 8 year period was back in 2016. I put a new video card in, so I put in a GeForce GTX 1060 with 6 gigabytes. My initial video card in the system when I bought it in 2012 was like a 2 gigabyte, I think like ATI Radeon or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what the model was, but it was a 2 gigabyte ATI, and I upgraded that to a 6 gigabyte NVIDIA card about 4 years ago. So my other specs for my system, again, I'm running an i7 3770 at 3.4 gigahertz. I'm running 24 gigabytes of RAM, and I already mentioned the GeForce GTX 1060 at 6 gigabytes. I'm playing the game on high settings right now. I can't play on ultra, I don't think, and I do get frame rate issues here and there on high. So maybe I'll drop down to medium or something like that to see if that actually improves the game at all. But it still runs fairly smoothly on high. I do have a few hiccups here and there, though. So let's see. So first off, a small basic history of myself and Microsoft Flight Simulator. I think I've owned, including this one, a total of 4 versions of Flight Simulator. The first one I ever played was, I think it was either Flight Simulator 3 or Simulator 4 on for Windows 3.1. It was probably for DOS, but that was when we had a Windows 3.1 or 3.11 work groups computer. So those are the first versions I played. Again, I don't recall if it was Flight Simulator 3 or 4. Um, the guy who built it for us basically just gave us, it included a bunch of games, including like Flight Simulator and a few other things. So again, I'm not sure which version it was. The next time I bought a Flight Simulator game was Flight Simulator 2000. I played that on Windows 98. And then after that, I played Flight Simulator X. I did this, or Flight Simulator 10. I did the Steam edition of that, and then Flight Simulator 2020. So just to not have any confusion between the games, I'm just going to call this new version. I think it's just called Flight Simulator. I'm going to call it Flight Simulator 2020 to not confuse it with the other versions of the game that I've played. So the game download initially is very small. However, once you launch the game, it goes into a huge download process where it downloads like 90 gigabytes of data. So I think when I installed it off of Steam, it was like the first download was like a gigabyte, and then it launches the game. It goes through and it basically downloads and updates all the files, and that's like a 90 gigabyte download. And that took me, I want to say, at least 2 hours. I did it over the course of a couple days because I think I bought it late night on like a Friday or something, last Friday, and didn't have time to really play it or wait that long to install it. So I paused it. The next day I downloaded more of it and then played the game. However, that download time, the time it takes to download and install the game, Steam does log that time. I did read an article that said because the Steam refund policy is if you've had the game for less, I think is it less than a week or less than 2 weeks? I don't recall, but it's either less than 2 weeks or less than 2 hours of game time. You can refund it, and I was wondering if the download time to install and download this game counted against your actual playtime. And the article I read said that that did not count. So if you had downloaded it, took you 2 hours to download it, and you played for an actual hour, you would still be eligible to get that refund on Steam. It's also available on the Windows Store as well. And I think it's also available, from what I read in another article, that it's available as part of the Windows Game Pass. So if you have that, I think this is one of the games that you could just basically play as part of your monthly subscription. Again, I just picked it up on Steam. But once you load the game, there's a few different things in the menu you can take a look at. The main menu, the most of the time you're going to be spending your time in the world map. This is where you can create flights. You can pick airports or points of interest to fly to. One really cool thing I like about this one is you can actually just choose a point of interest. Like I was flying around before I started doing this video. Did a flight around the Eiffel Tower, and you can actually just go to the map, zoom into France, find the Eiffel Tower, and click on it. And you can set that to either a destination or a starting point. If you set it as a starting point, you will start very close to the Eiffel Tower, and then you can basically kind of fly around in a circle around it, depending on what plane you're using. Or if you set it as a destination, you can take off from, say, like I think it's like De Gaulle Airport in France, or there's multiple airports, but that's one of them. It's like one of the main airports. You can fly from there, and then you'll have a waypoint to where the Eiffel Tower is. One problem with this, it's not really a problem. If you're trying to find a smaller town, it's a lot of those smaller towns won't actually be points of interest, so you won't be able to just automatically go there or have a waypoint set there. You'll have to fly basically from a nearby airport, and then kind of use like your map in this kind of like I've looked at maps on my phone or just alt tab to Google Maps and brought up maps that way to make sure I was flying in the right direction. So I was trying to like find my hometown, which isn't there's no air, there's like an airport I think like 40 miles like north of it, so I was able to go to that airport and just basically just fly south or slightly southwest and find my hometown. But most of the time you're going to be spending that in the world map. That's where you're basically doing all your different flights and all that. There's live events. I think there's like a landing challenge right now. I haven't done any of the live events yet, so I haven't actually like gone into that. The next thing you have is your flight training. This is all your tutorials on like takeoff, landing, controlling the plane, that kind of thing. I've done a few of the tutorials, especially like the landing tutorial is actually pretty good because I'm not particularly good at these games at all. I just enjoy kind of like flying around, but I was able to actually like take off from one airport and land at another airport without like destroying the plane. Um, so there's also activities that you can do. The activities right now I think are there's other landing challenges as well as bush flights. The bush flights are basically like small airport to small airport. Some of them are a little more challenging than others. I haven't done any of those yet either. And then the final thing is there's a segment for news. So I'm mostly playing this game just casually. I'm using, if I can get it right here, this Xbox 360 controller to play. I think I read an article that flight sticks are actually out of stock in a lot of places, or just like impossible to find because everybody is buying them to use for this game. I'm probably not going to buy a flight stick. I'm not that of hardcore of a simulator fan that I'm probably going to need a flight stick. The controller works pretty well for what I need to do. Um, so again, I'm just playing it casually. Um, Again, I'm not great at these games. Um, there's some really interesting things about this game. So it's very relaxing, kind of like in the way I find American Truck Simulator relaxing. And I may actually do some videos for Microsoft Flight Simulator as well. I tried to record some footage a couple nights ago. I think I had my settings too high in OBS and probably maybe even in the game that it was just getting a lot of frame rate drops in the video. So I might have to go through and go back and maybe output the video to 720p, maybe drop the bit rate a little bit, and we'll see. I might be able to get some videos up for Flight Simulator. So I would probably, if I do that, I'm gonna maybe just do a video flying around Denver, maybe a video flying around my hometown, maybe visiting some famous landmarks. I did a flight in New York City and kind of flew over Brooklyn a few days ago as well. That was a lot of fun. What else we got here? So one really cool thing I like about this game and is just flying into places that you know or that places that you've been just feels really satisfying. I can't really put my finger on why. It might be like a nostalgia thing because like I kind of lived in my hometown for like 6 years, so just going back there in the game felt really good. It was really fun. Um, Some towns are going to be the cool thing with this game is like the technology behind it is really interesting. So what you need a pretty decent internet connection to do this because or you can turn the option off in the game, I believe. But what it does is it streams data in from Bing Maps to kind of build the world. So like as you get closer to an area, it's like hey, he's flying toward that city. Like pull the data from that city and then build that city in the game. Some major cities or most major cities that I've been to in the game have fairly accurate buildings, like the actual texturing is proper. Um, for example, I was flying in through Las Vegas, and a lot of the actual names of the hotels are actually on the hotels if you get close enough to them. Things like that. Smaller towns, like for example, I was flying through the mountains, and a lot of the building structures were correct, like the way the buildings were laid out, the shape of the buildings and all that were correct, but they use like a generic texture because I don't think it pulls data from both Bing Maps and I think Bing Maps has kind of like a Street View version as well, and I think the Street View maps are what they're pulling a lot of the images from that will actually texture the buildings. And when I checked my hometown on Bing Maps, there was no Street View yet, so that's kind of a downside. It's I can definitely see why they're doing it because it's a Microsoft game. It's developed by basically published by Microsoft. So they're not going to be using Google Maps to get the data, even though that would probably look better. So it'd be cool if there was like a mod that somebody made like could modify it to instead of pulling data from Bing, it pulls data from Google. I don't know if that's ever going to be a possibility, but another thing I noticed is some of the towns are outdated. As in, like, I think I was reading a Reddit article or a Reddit post, I should say, where New York City, like, they're using the images for the textures of New York City is from 2014, which isn't that bad. I think I was flying through Denver, and there's certain areas of Denver where the data is maybe even older than that because there's a couple of buildings I pass on my way to work that have completely changed. Like they've been like redone a few times like since then, and the data is from before those buildings were actually like remodeled. So there's that. But the cool thing is it basically pulls data in, and then it kind of populates the game based on the data from these maps. So it does use your internet connection for that. It does use bandwidth. They do have an option to I think they have the option to turn that off or an option to limit the amount of data that it actually can use. They like say like hey I don't want it to use more than 10 gigabytes, and then it will like cap it at that. I don't also know if it would be cool if it does this. I'm not sure if it does, but if you're constantly flying around the same city, like I took a few flights around Denver, and if it says, hey, this guy's flying around Denver a lot, I wonder if it actually caches that data. So instead of having to constantly stream the data in each time you fly, it can just pull it from a cache or something like that. So there's that, and then we're going to get into some pros and cons from the game so far. So lots of places to fly, lots of things to see. Basically, like one of the taglines in the game in the loading screen is you can fly anywhere in the world, and that's pretty much true. As long as there's an airport there, you can basically fly there. Or if you have a jet that has enough fuel, you can get from point A to point B and kind of go wherever you want. So that is just a huge selling point. Like I wasn't sure if I wanted this game, and I don't even know if I consider it to be a game because I'm using it. A lot of people are using it as a like kind of like a sightseeing simulator. So I'm flying around again. Flew around New York, flew around Los Angeles, like flew past the Griffith Observatory, flew past the Hollywood sign, places like kind of like that. Flew over Disney World in Orlando just a little bit ago. Like again, flew around Paris. So some people are using it as a kind of like a sightseeing simulator. Some people are using it as a true flight simulator, and that's kind of like the game has really broad appeal because it appeals to people that just want to kind of casually fly around and see what there is, and then it also caters to the hardcore flight simulator fans where there is like increased difficulty. You can turn off all the assistance. Like there's a lot of things that like where you're taking off and landing, there's things that like will give you like guide markers, or when you're taking off and landing you have the radio chatter from the air traffic controller. And I think you actually have to, if you play on the harder difficulties, there are things where you basically have to constantly contact the radio control towers, I believe. I set that to, I'm playing on easy right now just so I can kind of just play kind of casually in a more relaxing way. But if you play on hard, it'll turn off, like all the assistance will be turned off. So basically there are achievements in the game for actually starting like one of the like jet engines manually without any kind of AI assistance. So the challenge level is there for people that want that, but also for the casual players, it's there as well. It's got some pretty good tutorials. I haven't done all the tutorials, but I've done a few of them, and they have you basically flying around, and it'll basically say, like to turn the plane, do this. To have to cut the power to the engines, do this. That kind of thing. The Bing map system is really cool. It's just like a really kind of ingenious way to have this world become populated by using kind of pre-existing maps and having that data be streamed in. Um, it's also kind of a negative because I kind of wish, again, like I said earlier, I know why they're doing it because it's a Microsoft product, but the Google Maps I think are a little bit more detailed. So it would be cool to see actual somebody do a mod where you can get those Google Maps. But that's a kind of like a minor complaint. Like I've never seen like my hometown or even Denver like rendered like the way it is in this game. Especially once you get closer to the ground, like you can definitely kind of like make out certain things in buildings. I flew over the Pepsi Center, and you can actually see on the one of the lawns there is a Pepsi logo. I flew over Coors Field, and you can actually see like the Rockies logo on the jumbotron. Almost called it a Titantron, but the jumbotron. Another cool thing is if you don't even want to fly, you can actually, or if you crash for some reason, you can actually use what they call our showcase cameras, and you can actually just like launch a drone and move the drone camera around and explore the game that way as well. So you can basically, and the drone usually moves a little bit faster. You can tweak the speed and have it be, you can have it move slow, you can have it move fast. But basically, you can kind of explore these areas with this drone. And you kind of just go use your control stick to go forward and backward. I think your triggers will like raise and lower the drone, so you can get high or you can get low. So the flight drone is really cool as well. What else we got here? So the graphics are really good. Like I think like my only complaint with the graphics is some buildings in some smaller areas are not fully rendered because of there being a lack of like the street view data from Bing. But like the scenery looks great, the roads look great, the water looks amazing, the planes all look really good as well. So the graphics are great, and then back we're going to move into the cons here. There's only a few of them. They're all fairly minor. The most major one I have is the load times, at least for me. I don't know what other people's load times are like, but load times are very long. So you load the game, it takes a while. You hit a button, it says on the main menu, it says hit any button to play. You hit a button you hit any key or any button on your controller, and then it goes into another loading screen. You go into the world map to do your flight. You choose your arrival, your destination in your arrival airport, or your basically like your to and from. You choose that. You choose your plane, and then it goes into another loading screen after that. That takes a while. So the load times are pretty long. I don't know what I could do to improve the load times aside from maybe upgrading my processor. I think if I ever get a new computer, this game will run a lot better. But the load times are fairly long, and I think they're fairly long from what I've been reading for a lot of people. So long load times, that's a con right there. One minor thing, this isn't a problem for me because I'm not really familiar with it. But one review I was reading was saying that the air traffic control, like the dialogue and like kind of like the lingo that the air traffic controllers are using, isn't exactly accurate. And apparently that's been a problem in these games for quite a while, where the like actual pilots that play the game have said, like that's not the proper like terminology that these air traffic controllers are using. Again, I have no experience with that because I've never actually like listened to an air traffic controller thing before. I think you can still listen to the air traffic controller if you go to if you're on a flight. I think you were able to at one point plug headphones into your armrest, and if you tuned it to a certain frequency, you were able to at least like listen in on the radio towers. So next time I take a flight, which probably isn't going to be until next June now, because I was going to go to LA this year for a concert that got canceled or got postponed, I should say. Um, so maybe on that flight, I'll see if that is still a thing that you can do. Um, so that's kind of like a minor complaint. Again, it doesn't really affect me, but a few reviews I was reading was saying that the air traffic controller dialogue isn't exactly accurate. Um, Again, generic. Another con is there are some buildings that just have like generic textures for the buildings that are not really part of the Bing Street View yet. Like I said, the building layouts are there. The structure of the buildings is proper. Like they're like the way the buildings are shaped and the way they're configured. It's just a lot of them just have kind of a more generic texturing than some of the city. Like when I was flying through Denver, you could definitely see that they were using Street View data for that. But for towns and cities that don't have Street View data yet, they're just using generic textures, which is pretty minor because that may come eventually. And that's another ingenious thing with the the system pulling data from Bing Maps is, in theory, if as those maps get updated, the game will basically have those updated maps in it as well, and then maybe we'll get buildings that have the proper texturing. And the other minor thing is the DLC. So I'm not really too concerned with the additional airports because you can still fly in and out of those airports even without the DLC. But there is quite a few planes that you're going to be missing if you don't pick up either the deluxe or the premium edition. So again, the number of planes for me in this game is fine. I'm really just liking the single kind of engine prop planes because I like doing the more scenic kind of flights where I can get down into like a town and get a little bit closer and see what's there. But for people that have a certain plane that they really like, or a certain or just like let's say there's a certain plane you really want to fly, it may not be available in just a standard edition. I believe the planes are available as I don't think you have to buy the standard or the deluxe or the premium edition to get a certain plane. I think they do offer, at least from what I saw in the game, there's a marketplace where I think you can pick and choose what planes you want. If you don't want all the planes from the deluxe edition, you can choose say like I want this and that plane, or I want that airport and that airport. Again, the airports are all there in the game. It's just that the handcrafted airports, which are going to be more detailed, are generally going to be DLC. But that's my basic review of it. And aside from a few fairly minor issues with like again the long load times, the air traffic controllers, the building textures in some areas, and some of the places being DLC, I'm really enjoying the game. I didn't know I was going to enjoy the game this much. I liked Flight Simulator 10, but definitely I'm liking this more because they added this whole other element where you can basically just kind of go to a city or go somewhere and just kind of explore and see what's there. I don't remember the other games definitely were not this detailed. So it's really fun. I've been playing it. I think I've got like 15 hours logged on it so far. That does include the setup time. So I'm probably have played over the last few days. Probably have played close to 12 or 13 hours on it. So if that's any indication, it's definitely it's an amazing game. So amazing, kind of like an amazing experience. When I was like flying into my hometown, you fly over a mountain and you see a huge lake, and it's just kind of epic once you actually like get over that mountain and actually see the entire county kind of like laid out below you. Or if you're flying like again flying into Denver, you fly a while off of the out of the airport, and then you kind of see the Denver skyline in the distance. And as you get closer, you can get closer to those buildings, and you can get closer to like the roadways, and you can actually see there's like live traffic that flies around and stuff like that. There's supposed to be I haven't experienced with it yet, but there's like live weather. So in theory, basically, if it's raining in the city that you're flying into, it'll be raining in the game if you have that option enabled. Um, but so far, just a really it's kind of like it's definitely an experience. It's something that you kind of have to see to believe, basically. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's just something really special happening when you like fly into a place that you know, and then you kind of see it being kind of like rendered for you, and like even buildings that are like not textured properly, you can say like, hey, I totally know what that building is. That's that building, or there's the Luxor in Vegas, or there's the Bellagio. Flew over the Bellagio fountains. I don't know if the fountains actually go off in the game, but you could definitely see the Bellagio pool if you get close enough to it. Because I was in Vegas a couple years back, but I might go back to see if I can find the older Las Vegas, like the old Vegas Strip kind of area. The cool thing with Vegas is basically the hotel, like all the strip is right next to the airport, so it's a really easy kind of flight. You basically just take off, you go, and then you can just kind of like fly across the entire like down the length of the strip and see all the kind of iconic hotels and all that. Um, but the kind of like the world is kind of just like open to you in this game. It's like very much like a sandbox like flight game in that way. Um, and I don't think I've enjoyed a flight game or like one of the Microsoft Flight Simulator games this much. So at least for me, it's highly recommended. I'm really liking it. One bit of warning is if you're looking to get a flight stick, apparently those are going to be hard to get for a while. I'm using an Xbox 360 controller. You can play with keyboard as well. But that's going to do it for this review. Again, really enjoying Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. That's going to do it for this video. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Take care.